If you've ever watched the TV show Dexter, you know the show about the guy who kills the bad guys. You've probably thought it was just a bunch of made-up stuff. But today we're talking about a guy who isn't too far off from being a real-life Dexter. Now, as far as I know, the show wasn't inspired by the subject of today's episode, or the show wasn't based on him, but there's a lot of similarities, and his name is Pedro Rodrigues Filho.
Hello.
Mystery, murder, and magic, heroes, and
Good morning and welcome to episode 27 of Mystery, Murder, and Magic. Alex is joining us again today. What about that?
I don't know.
Well, we just got home from watching the fireworks that the sheriff's office here does. And, well, we didn't just come in. Alex had to eat potato salad first.
Dude, that potato salad was good.
He talked about it all the way home from the fireworks.
Dude, it's good. I like potato salad.
It's literally just potatoes and mayonnaise.
Don't ruin it for me.
Mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise.
It's an instrument.
It's an instrument.
But anyway, I thought the fireworks were really pretty this year.
Yeah.
I mean, they always do like a really freaking good job on them. Like,
Yeah, they do.
But I don't know. I think everybody enjoyed it. And God, I couldn't get over how many people was in that parking lot.
There's a lot of people in that parking lot.
I didn't think we were ever gonna get to like pull out.
We were gonna die there.
I thought we were gonna just have to be buried there at Lowe's. Like, I don't know, but I mean, for it to be such a small area, it was a lot of traffic.
Yeah, it really was.
But anyway, I just want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to the Newberry County Sheriff's Office for like putting that on every year. I know it probably takes a lot of money, but you know, they could have canceled it because of COVID, but you know, they still did something for the citizens of Newberry County and the surrounding area, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah. It is pretty cool.
It really is. And I mean, usually what they do is they have like the football stadium open and you can go and there's like bouncy houses and food vendors and stuff like that. But last year and this year they decided not to do that because of COVID. But at least they still did the big fireworks what you call it? Exposition?
Expedition.
Anyway, the fireworks show.
Yeah, that word.
Yeah. Well,
Let's start.
before we get started, though, I
my
want to
God.
give an update on something we talked about way back in January. Do y'all remember the story from Norway, South Carolina, where the people had ridden their ATVs to a house that they had been told was haunted, and they found a body in a freezer? Do y'all remember that? Well, on Wednesday of last week, which would have been the 30th of June, I believe, authorities announced that they are seeking a person of interest. So I think that's pretty cool. Orangeburg County Sheriff's investigators are looking for a guy. He's 22 years old, and his name is Kendall Tyrone Dixon, and he's from Orangeburg. And they've also identified that body that they found in that freezer, because, you know, for a long time they couldn't ID him. But he's 24-year-old Robert Fuller. So at least maybe they're starting to put this together and get it closed out, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, I thought, man, how can they not know who this person was? Because he had like a very distinctive tattoo. And I was like, surely they can ID him by that.
Yeah. They could.
All right, well, we're going to talk about a guy by the name of Pedro. Now, I had never heard of this guy until I posted on Facebook last week. And it kind of confused me at first, so I had to look more into it. And I was like, hey, we need to talk about this. But anyway, so Pedro Rodrigues Filho, I don't know if I'm saying that
I
right.
don't think you are.
Filho, I know, probably not. He was born June the 17th, 1954 in Brazil. And when he was born, he had an injury to his skull. His mom was still pregnant with him, his dad attacked her and beat her pretty bad, and it caused a skull injury for him. Now, then throughout his childhood, he was abused several times by his father too. So it sounds like Pedro had a pretty rough start at life. Now, he said that the first time he felt the urge to kill somebody was when he was only 13 years old.
Oh.
I know. And he claims that he tried to kill his cousin by pushing him into a sugarcane press, but he was unsuccessful, and he didn't actually carry out a murder or his first murder until he was 14 years old, which is still pretty young.
Yes.
I don't know what's going on. It must be allergies.
Yes.
Anyway, at that time, Pedro's father was working as a security guard at a high school, and he was fired from that job when he was accused of stealing food from the kitchen. Pedro decided to get his vengeance by murdering the vice mayor by shooting him with a shotgun right in front of City Hall, and because it was the vice mayor who had fired his father. A month later, he killed another guard who was working at the school because it was believed that that was the guard, or that guard was the one that was actually stealing the food and not his father. Now, after he committed that second murder, he hid out in Sao Paulo. And while he was in Sao Paulo, he went on a burglary spree in the slums. And during that spree, he murdered a drug dealer. Well, this is also when he met his future fiancée. Her name was Maria Olympia. However, sadly, they never got married because she was brutally murdered by gang members. And those gang murderers were angry because Pedro had the reputation of killing drug dealers. Now, not only was Maria the love of his life, she was pregnant with his child when they killed her.
Oh my god.
Well, this in turn infuriated Pedro. So, what does he do? He carries out a massacre during a wedding that was organized by that gang's leader. He and his friends killed 7 people that day, and 16 others were injured. A few months after that, Pedro became enraged again when he found out that his favorite cousin had gotten pregnant, but the father of the baby refused to marry her. So guess what? He murdered him also.
Of course.
Before Pedro turned 18 years old, he had already killed 10 people. Before he turned 18. So that was like a 4-year period that it only took him to kill 10 people in 4 years. That's crazy.
That is, like...
I mean, and that's a teenager doing that. I mean, not like a hardened criminal or any... Well, I mean, he's becoming a hardened criminal and all that. But,
yeah.
Anyway. So, I guess the apple don't fall far from the tree. Because it was during this time period that Pedro found out that his father was in prison for murdering with a machete and dismembering the body of his mom.
Oh my god.
Pedro visited him in jail. Listen to this. He visited his dad in jail and killed his father in the jail, stabbing him 22 times. Right there in the jail, he killed his dad. And after he murdered him, he cut his father's heart out of his chest, took a bite out of it, and threw it in the trash.
Ugh.
I mean,
That's...
who does that, you
Yeah.
know? Now, Pedro continued on his crusade of killing criminals until his arrest in 1973. But even then, he didn't stop killing. When he was arrested, he was placed in the car with another criminal who was a rapist.
Oh.
Pedro killed him and continued killing while he was incarcerated in prison. While in prison, he reportedly killed 47 inmates.
47.
And most of the inmates that Pedro killed were involved in murders, and Pedro thought that they deserved to be killed. So I guess he was kind of like a serial killer of serial killers, you know? Or of killers. Well, as you can imagine, this caused the majority of the prison population to hate him. One day, a group of inmates decided to ambush Pedro, but in the process, Pedro killed 3 of his attackers and injured the other 2. He killed his cellmate because he snored too much.
That's stupid.
He killed other criminals because, in his words, killing other criminals was satisfying. Now, in 2003, he came up for parole, but it was denied because of all the murders he had committed in prison. But he was finally released from prison in 2007, but he ended up back in jail in 2011 for riot and false imprisonment. Now, I couldn't find, like, details on what all that entailed, but I just know that he went back to prison. And they sentenced him to 128 years on those charges. But he was released again in 2018 because apparently Brazil repealed like a decree that declared that diagnosed psychopaths can be held indefinitely, and the fact that Brazil's maximum prison sentence is 30 years. So what was his like MO? Like, why was he doing this? Well, he targeted different types of criminals. He would find them by looking up their names and addresses and then brutally killing them in different ways. But he claimed that his favorite method was either stabbing or hacking with sharp objects. He was also known to capture and torture career criminals. He would torture them to death if he was motivated by anger instead of the thrill of the kill. In an interview, he was asked what kind of feelings did he feel when killing criminals, and he responded that it was like an adrenaline rush. He's been described by psychiatrists as the perfect psychopath, but others have described him as a sociopath instead. A writer even went as far as to describe him as an Avenger/vigilante type serial killer who was very intelligent. During his kill streak, it's confirmed that Pedro killed 71 people in total. But now he claims he's killed around 100 people.
Half of that was in like a prison or whatever.
I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe there's probably just some that's before he was put in prison that was unaccounted for or
Probably.
whatever, you know. So, what do you think he's up to now?
I don't know. Like, he should be dead. Like,
You would think. Well, let me tell you what. It seems like he's turned his life around.
God.
In 2018, he converted to Christianity, and he has a YouTube channel.
Of course he does.
No, listen. He has a YouTube channel that he uses to warn today's youth about the dangers of a life of crime. So I guess maybe he's trying to teach, like kids, like, you know, a life of crime don't pay and it's really dangerous and whatnot. So maybe he's just trying to like teach the lessons that he learned.
Yeah.
I don't know. I need to like. I was gonna go on YouTube and try to find him just to see what he says.
Yeah.
Well, you got anything to add to that part of this episode?
It's kind of funny. He has a YouTube channel now.
I know.
What?
Yeah, I mean, the YouTube channel. I wonder how many followers he's got. Subscribers. But anyway, before we end this episode, I want to let you in on something new that we're working on, and I'm kind of excited about it because it gives us a chance to connect with people. Last week, I put out a plea to my friends on Facebook and their friends for anyone who has had any type of paranormal experience. Well, people are really wanting to participate, so we're going to put that together. If you would like to participate, like if you've had any kind of like ghost stories to tell, or you've seen a UFO, anything, just send us an email at 3mpodcast3@gmail.com. And what we can do is either you can just, write the experience out in an email and I can read it on an episode, or we can look at our schedule, see what we can come up with and do a Zoom meeting, and I can record it so that we can play it on the episode. Now, don't worry, you don't have to be on a camera or anything. I only need your voice. So, we're going to be doing that. And I'm just going to tell you a little something about one of the normal experiences I've had. And this happened in 2014. My daughter had just had my grandson, Jax. And I was staying with her for about a week or so, just helping her out. She had had a C-section. And they had just recently moved into a house they were renting right before the baby was born. And one morning, I woke up and I could hear a woman crying, and I thought, it doesn't really sound like Courtney, but she was the only other woman in the house.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh man, maybe she's got postpartum depression. And I was like, oh, I need to check on her. So I walked down the hall, and her bedroom was cracked. The door was cracked open. I could see in the room, and she's laying there sound asleep. And I'm like, okay, so that wasn't Courtney. Now, there was no TV on because the cable people hadn't came and hooked it up or anything. It wasn't anything on a phone. And the further I went down the hall, the louder it became. And it was like this weeping, sobbing cry. If you've ever played the Left 4 Dead games and the witch, when she's stooped down on the ground crying and rocking back and forth before she attacks you, that's what the cry kind of sounded like. But anyway, so I went to every room, the bathroom, the kitchen, the back porch, everything, and could not locate where this was coming from. And then it just stopped. And I didn't hear that particular sound anymore, the whole time I was staying with her. I think I stayed with her about 10 days. But anyway, so, I was helping out around the house, washing dishes and bottles and stuff. And I can just distinctly remember standing at the kitchen sink, washing bottles, and I can feel somebody watching me. And above the sink was this really big, it was a pretty picture window, and I can remember I looked up in it, and I could see the outline. Now, it wasn't very clear of an outline. I couldn't make out facial features or anything like that. But I distinctly saw a face. It wasn't on the outside. I turned around and looked behind me, and I didn't see anybody. It could have been my mind playing tricks on me, but
probably.
Mr. Skeptical says probably. But anyway, after I heard that lady crying, I wasn't very comfortable being there. It was just, there was this feeling, there was a bad energy in that house. It was just it felt like doom or something, and they didn't live there long. They heard stuff and felt stuff too. They only lived in that house a couple of months and they moved out, and now they have a nice little house. So, but anyway, that was a short little paranormal experience that I had. But anyway, we do want to invite you, if you have anything you'd like to share, just reach out to us. You can even holler at us on our Facebook page, and that's 3M Podcast. But anyway, that's all we've got for today. We had fun talking to y'all.
Yep.
We hope you had a really good 4th of July. Ate some good food, watched some pretty fireworks, and whatnot, so forth and so on.
Yeah, those fancy words.
Anyway, join us back Wednesday for the midweek mini. And on the weekend, we do the Weekend Weird Files. Y'all have a good rest of your day.